Well, I welcome everyone who has the opportunity, who somehow has been led to listening to this conversation today. And I feel very, very fortunate to have with me today a dear friend, Lisa Firestone. And Lisa is so many things to me, has become such a dear heart to me. And I know that she is an amazing human doing, someone who has an amazing singer songwriter, has gifted us with so much of herself in that way. And I am here today to invite her to share with you not only about her human doingness, but about her human beingness. And so, Lisa, if you would share a little bit with us about yourself and about the journey that you have found yourself on now, that I feel will be a huge gift to those who listen to this recording today.
Yeah, thank you, Rhonda. Thank you for having me. And I'm also finding that with all the millions of ways that people can spend their time and distractions, anyone that is guided to be here, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
My name is Elizabeth or Lisa Firestone. I am a musician and a songwriter, and I'm authoring a book right now. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a Los Angelina, like you are, Rhonda. And I'm, in terms of roles, these are the being, and I mean, more doing. I have 2 grown children, and a recent history moving through recurring cancer. How's that? And I had a brain tumor diagnosed in 2015, was removed from my brain, and it came back and was removed again in 2019. And since then, I am on a path of not just physical recovery, but a lot of spiritual and recovery in every sense of the word, just
Right.
every sense.
Right. Lisa, can you explain or convey somehow what, from that moment that doctors or caregivers or someone sat down with you and said, hey, you have a brain cancer, a tumor, what did that trigger or initiate in your process? What are some of the thoughts, and where have they taken you on this journey?
So that's a good question, because what comes to my mind first is that I was in denial, not so much about the fact that I had a life-threatening brain tumor, because it was supposed to be just one of the easy ones. In fact, it was malignant, but I was in denial of my life.
Right.
And what I recognized, if I have to be just super, super honest, I was so disconnected from myself and from who I was at the time, that all I did, it was kind of like riding a river. I just listened. I took in what was said. I did what I was told. It was almost like being in the military. I felt some feelings, but not very deep, because I was so disconnected from myself. And since that time, a lot has changed. But does that answer the question in a way? Like, I actually could not feel the depth of grief or fear,
Right.
because I was using other means to disconnect from my emotions. I didn't have the strength,
Right.
and
So,
the honesty and the openness and the willingness to really examine those things. I didn't have the skills.
right. As you heard those words, from what I'm hearing you say, like you were in denial. All you, at that point, you felt all you needed to do or were compelled to do was follow whatever direction the doctors gave you.
Mhm.
And I'm hearing you say you didn't allow yourself to really consider what it meant that your life might be finite, it might be lost sooner than later, that, you know, all of those things, all of those thoughts came or were suppressed.
Mm. The thoughts of what would my life be like, they didn't come.
Mm-hmm.
I felt, of course, just the standard traditional fear, but what I recognize is that the true illness that I was suffering was in my ability to be honest with myself, to live in authenticity. I was in a relationship that didn't see me for who I was, and because I really admired and respected that person, I figured he must be right.
Mm. Yeah.
And I must not have that much to say or do or that matters, and I'll just stay quiet. And it's interesting because prior to this, I had played a role, a very public role as a leader in my spiritual community. But I think that there's a something that happens. The crazy thing about this situation with brain tumors is that there's a neurologist that actually has a quote. I should have pulled it up. But it's something to the effect of the true insidious nature of a brain tumor is that because it's affecting the thinking process, it's like I'll find it before the end of the thing, but it basically affects how you see in so we people see you and you look fine, but inside something's not right, and you're not even aware that something's not right. And by the time that the brain tumor had been discovered, it was so large. I was a frog in a slow boil.
Right, right. So what led to the discovery? Was it just not feeling well?
Seizures. I was having focal seizures. So, and then they increased. I got bumped on the head. My horse bumped me on the head, and kaboom! I just started seizing every hour, and that would just look like a convulsing thing on the left side, and it was pressing on my sensory cortex. So the crazy thing is that when it was removed, that all went away
Right.
until it returned. But so my thought, I think, because I was in a mode of just surviving, it was kind of like I just accepted whatever came.
Right. Right.
And it was, I think I was so disconnected. But what has come from it in the recovery process is accessing the depth of the grief
Right.
and the shock and the waking up of what matters and
Yes.
who actually cares and how they show up and who is safe and who's not.
Right. Right.
And so all of that has come as a gift as a result of this. And it's really also been in the last year increased to its highest potential, where I just have a complete awareness of my mortality.
Yes. Yeah.
Because my physical body, I wake up in the morning and it reminds me, this is not the way I thought my life would go. And so just acknowledging that and being with it and loving it as it is has created a whole new awakening for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, the conversation of death has been such a taboo one for so very long, especially in our Western culture. You know, we see death all of the time. We see it in television shows. We see it glorified on the big screen, and it's all very gory and sensationalized. And
Mhm.
yet it is a topic that we totally avoid. And I think COVID brought it to the forefront where it's something we're all thinking about, but we just don't give ourselves permission. Um, I think death is always thrown at us in a very traumatic framework. And then COVID began to personalize it to where we recognize that we all are mortal. The truth is we share two things in common. We're born and we die. And life is terminal. Life is 100% fatal. It's just the when we think it should follow a specific arc. And we're always surprised when it doesn't. And yet the truth is it seldom really does follow that arc.
Reminds me of the poem, The Dash.
Yes. Yes.
I also heard something you said about how it's glorified on TV. I've been watching Outlander with Jana, and here's this great, he's going to go down with his people. And it was just all this noble stuff. And I thought, it's interesting. It is glorified. Violence is glorified. But the crazy thing is that, in our culture, my family, if you mention death, the immediate response is, oh, come on, we don't talk about that. Or, oh,
Right.
Stop that. And even my own children, having come through this surgery, and I was so close to death. In February last year, I was so close to death that I had an advocate, a friend of mine, come in and finally just say to the doctors, who were just kind of like doing stuff, and nothing was working, and I was getting sicker and sicker. And what I remember from the experience was I was in so much pain. I could not communicate with any clarity. I was in so much pain. And I just remember saying to my partner of the time, God's going to have to take me because I can't do this. And I had a friend come in and she said, Lisa, your body was here, but your soul was over there. She's kind of intuitive. And I said, yeah, I'm sure you're right. I don't have much memory. I'm sure those opiates were working well. But my advocate came in and said, listen, she's someone who's not afraid to talk to death about death. She's the one that goes to the person who's dying and says, look, could I help you with your will?
All right.
And so she looked at the doctors in the eye, and none of my family members, no one close to me was standing up. And she said, she's been in here 3 or 4 weeks and she's not getting better. And so if she's going to die, why don't we just take her home right now? Or at least get a second opinion. And suddenly things started changing.
The role of any doctor, that oath that they took, and then the way that oath is impacted, and not impacted, but how it bumps up against the belief that the role of the doctor is to keep you alive, period, to keep you alive. And they will,
regardless of the cost of life. Yeah. It's painful. Most people that I speak to are very vocal about the fact that I don't want to live like that. That's not the way I want to live. Actually, had I not come out fully from this, or had I been impaired, I would have definitely said, please donate my organs. Don't keep me on a machine. That's ridiculous.
right.
I have enough trust in my creator at this point. And I do. And I think that that experience woke me up. It was interesting when I came back. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. For a few weeks after the surgery, I was in a really heightened state where everything that I touched, oh God, it sounds corny. It's going to sound real woo-woo.
No, go woo woo. Go
I,
woo woo.
everything that I touched and everything that I looked at, I had to, just remembering the clarity, it either gave me life or it took life. And what I got from that experience was that I have too much stuff around me. This stuff is not where my attention is, because I had been spending so much time playing safe, but just tending to the environment in the home that I was in, caring for my partner's home and making a space a home and beautiful. And I really felt like that was so, it felt so safe and so loving. He didn't see it that way. He had different needs. But what I remember was when I came out of the thing, I had this clarity that, oh my God, that's not what I'm here to do. The distraction to the world around me is actually pulling me from what I really need to do, which is to create.
Uh-huh.
So I am writing those songs now and writing this book, and hope that it can be of service to someone who is suffering. It's just today, working with Janice Stanfield in service, we did this
Amazing. Amazing.
about really what death. I think it was you that said it's not death that's scary. Most people are scared of dying. For myself, death isn't scary. It's living an unlived life.
Yes. 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 It's my near-death experience was at age 17. And that was at a time where people weren't talking about it at all. Now, a lot of years later, white hair later, that it's where now people are beginning. It's why I feel so compelled to continue to bump open that door and make this conversation safe, because it wasn't for me. And those insights that came, and the integration of that experience that told me death is not the scary part. It's like you're saying, it's living an unfulfilled life, not being the all that you can be.
Yeah,
It's the regret that would come by dying, living according to somebody else's expectations of who you are.
no kidding.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
just to add to that, I think now more than ever, in probably any time in history, of course, I don't know what happened prior to 2000 years ago, but I know there were civilizations. We are in a culture that is just a huge machine. It's a mechanism for corporate profit, profit of the few. I mean, we are more inequality than we've ever been
Yeah.
in modern history. So, when 0.1% of the people have, 90% of the
The wealth.
resources.
Yeah.
So this is pure insanity that we're living in. We've got a plastic, like, if we really look at it, it's pure insanity. And yet we are so distracted by irrelevant things.
Yeah.
Irrelevant things. It's no wonder people turn to drugs or addictions or things like that in order to find comfort.
Yeah. To numb.
My comfort came in the way that I would find comfort was in the connection and finding a partner, keeping a partner, or just staying in intimate relations so I didn't have to look at all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, or sometimes I've had various addictions through my life, but even just wanting to play very small and just I don't fault it. Like, I see that it makes perfect sense that I would just want to create a small, safe environment because I don't have the capacity or the strength to go out and try to change the world. But, you know, I'm learning now that as I heal and I have more strength, I have more to give and I can do more for others. And I just am learning to be very gentle with myself.
Well, and it's what gives birth to the authenticity to be a genuine part of the evolution. You know, I think I have become so aware that it's all an ego construct, that there is anything to change or fix. It's part of that numbing that through that relationship, that bumping into death, it brings you to what matters. So if that is why we have this human paradox, I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to see and recognize what matters. And for those who remain very attached to doing more and having more, it feels very woo-woo and foreign. And yet, by knowing death and having that near-death experience, and like you're saying, by your confronting your mortality in the way that you did, and feeling that, feeling the feelings that come that are beyond our five senses, that we've been told are our container, it's hard to be in this reality and have that awareness. And yet that awareness is what compels me to have these conversations, to give people the peace of knowing there's more than what appears.
Certainly, you know, if anybody does, and that's what's led you to this work, isn't it?
Yeah.
To help to offer some encouragement and understanding for those who might fear that.
What would you offer as as insight or guidance to physicians who find themselves in that role of imparting information like that?
Ooh, that is a question. I smile because when I was in the hospital, I wasn't capable of having empathy for my nurses and I'm sure they needed it, or my doctors. But I was far too sick. What I would say, if they're imparting information, first of all, our belief, of course, affects the truth of reality. Or there's a placebo effect to everything we believe. So I would exercise caution in giving 6 months based on charts. Some people with this, maybe this, but others, who knows? I think that I also would say that people first. I think my experience in the hospital was, I'm really grateful that I survived. In the end, if I could do some things differently, I would. There was a cost I paid to following some Western practices that I'm reminded of every day. So I take full accountability for making those choices.
Right.
But I also recognize that it's really up to a patient to decide what they want.
Yeah.
When I said I didn't want this particular treatment, I sought 3 or 4 opinions, and they all said I did it. So I made the choice to do this radiation treatment. It was called proton therapy radiation, but which is a very focused radiation to make sure that there are no cells. But I would say that, you know, there are some things there are conditions in life that are not worth living.
Right.
And so it's, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't treat death like it was a monster, if we were just
Right.
I think it's a heavy burden for them, because if families feel like it's a monster and then the doctor doesn't, then
Yeah. And it's the quality over quantity, you know. It,
Mm.
it's where it sounds like when you were surprised by the diagnosis or first learned of the diagnosis, the conditioning that we all have is that we fight cancer.
Mhm.
Well, anything we fight against, we have to become the energy of in order to fight against it. Um,
Yes, brings me to the Carrie Groat Facebook post. Carrie
yeah,
Groat is a young girl who, unlike me, had a glioblastoma, so it took her life. She was a young girl, and she made a fearless Facebook post, beautiful thing about that, saying, culture has us believing that we're fighting cancer. We're all going to go, and I don't want to feel shamed. No one needs to feel shamed because they have cancer.
or
That's
that they've lost a battle.
lost a battle. Yeah, before the show, we were talking about the word survivor. I use the word survivor um, for two reasons. First of all, I never want to be defined by the fact that I had brain cancer, but sometimes it's true, I actually need a pass here and there.
Yeah.
Sometimes. And so, and that's, if I forget things, names in particular, but that aside, I say it because I didn't see it as a fight, but I see it because it doesn't define who I am, but it's a part of how I got here. And
Yeah.
where I got now is in this space of deeper clarity. I feel deeper. I love deeper. Um, you know, like they said in this song I wrote with Jen, I'm unafraid. I just realized, oh, it's coming anyway. I don't have to be afraid of this.
Right.
I practice mindfulness, which is a practice of two things. It's about being aware. The way I practice is being more aware of my body space. Sometimes that brings me to mourning because I feel the change in my body, but it's also becoming more aware of the space here and quieting my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Um, I would love for you to sing all or part of the song, because when you shared Unafraid and the lyrics, it just so resonated with me. And
Mhm.
to me, what you're explaining, giving words to, it's like when I try to talk about my near death experience, I soon get to the point of tears, and words aren't enough. It's like for Rhonda to be without words,
Mhm.
it's a big deal. And
You were touched, but I would be happy to. I can just do it acoustically, a cappella, if that's okay with you.
yeah, that would be
Uh,
wonderful.
yeah, I'd be happy to. And just to make sure, thinking of, well, I guess we can come back to, you mentioned something about the five senses, and I wanted to know, um, we can come back to that if you'd like. I'll go ahead and sing a
I
song.
would. I'm taking a couple of notes because there are two things I want to ask you. So we'll come back to five senses. But
Okay, so you want to hear the song?
yeah,
Mm, okay. Okay, so the song is called Unafraid. And yeah, written with Janice Danfield. I'm unafraid to live, I'm unafraid to die. To love with all my heart, even when it makes me cry. I'm learning to surrender what I cannot change, so I can face each new day unafraid. I'm unafraid of truth, 'cause it leads to understanding. I'm unafraid of sorrow, it keeps my heart expanding. Life is like a patchwork quilt, tattered, worn, and frayed. I'm finding peace with every memory made. Wrapped inside it, I feel unafraid. I never could have come this far on my own. Those who held my hand made sure I never walked alone. We trust what our heart tells us, or we trust what we hear. Still, regret can find us after some years. For every risk I took, every price I paid, looking back, I see the hand of grace. I take it and I move on, unafraid, 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 unafraid.
That's so wonderful, Lisa. And it, in many ways, took bumping into death in order to give birth to that song.
Oh, unquestionably, yeah.
Yeah. And what you describe even in that song, and what you describe as you talked about coming out of your surgery and having everything have expanded dimension that beyond your five senses.
Mm-hmm.
It's where I recognize or I observe, as we're in this evolution, it's, for many people it still is, but we're on this journey of it no longer is either or. It's both and it's beyond linear. We really are moving from a very binary paradox into the hologram. It's the beyond the five senses, where people react to the word non-binary. We're just being introduced to what that means. And to live in a non-binary existence doesn't mean that you give up your identity. You don't give up your uniqueness. It's where your uniqueness is honored in its full expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me more about what came to you when talking about the five senses and beyond.
Oh, when you mentioned that, I was thinking, yeah, that period of time there, gosh, I was tricked into thinking it would last forever. I wish it had.
Yeah.
It was, some laugh and tease me. They said, Lisa, you were in a drug-induced coma. But the truth was, I was recognizing with clarity what was giving me life and what was taking away life.
Right.
And I also have had, I guess what I was saying about I wouldn't say that I'm intuitive, but all human beings are intuitive. I'm an intuitive. Okay, I'm going to own it. I'm intuitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way intuition has happened for me is that I will have visitations, usually in a lucid state. And some of my loved ones have come to see me. And the first time it happened, it was so shocking and clear that I always find myself waking up weeping with joy, because there's this luminescence and there's this energy, there's communication, and all these things happen without any words.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
And there's a beautiful thing too that comes too that tells me, oh, death is not permanent. It's funny, like people look for pennies from heaven and stuff like that. I find that asking really helps, but trusting, the tendency and I see this with my kids all the time, is there's that demonstration and I dismiss it.
Right. Right.
What a beautiful gift. Like how unsafe, there's this opportunity to recognize this incredible connection and gift that's given. And then I dismiss it. Oh, it's just a coincidence. Like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to hold each moment of my life as sacred. I've just found that now I really just wake in my mornings and practice my sacred rituals. And
Right. Right. That life is too short not to. It is that dash between the day you were born and the day you die, and the first breath and the last exhale. And I know I had the privilege, the very difficult privilege of being with my dearest friend Mary when she passed. And her partner Gary and I were spending those final hours with her. And at midnight, this clap of thunder and lightning happened. And that's when I knew Mary had left the building. Elvis had left the building. Mary had left her body. Her body didn't shut down until 10:15 or so the next day.
wow.
But I know that that time was in service of her body shutting down, that Mary had lifted out, her spirit had gone. And
Wow.
she has always come in the form of a hummingbird.
Oh,
And so it's just such a sweet, sweet reminder of Mary. And
wow. And I
yeah,
hear your faith in that and your trust. And whatever, I'm curious how it was you knew that at midnight she left the body. Was there some indication that it gave you?
ah,
Just a knowing.
just a knowing, just a knowing, and even uh, I'm wondering if it's true for your children, but when my kids were very little, my youngest was barely 7, if 7, the first and only opportunity at that point that we had to take them to Europe. And what a formidable task that was, to take 2 small children, plus my ex-husband, so it was like having 3 children maneuvering through Europe. But we happened to visit one of the concentration camps. And I
Mm.
hadn't told my youngest daughter much about what we were doing. I said, we're going to go visit a historical site.
Mm.
Because at that point in my growth, my evolution, I didn't go into great detail. So we walked into the big gates of this huge compound that there was only 1 or 2 of the remaining barracks left in this huge compound. And we walked through these huge gates, and we were maybe, 100 feet in, and I'm continuing walking, and I recognize that Dana is not by my side.
Mm.
And I turned around, and she's just paralyzed in place with these tears rolling down her face.
Mm.
And I walked back to her and got down on my knees, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Mommy, what happened here? Where are all the mommies and their babies?"
Mm.
And just tears, like she had but she could feel it. And as an older adult, a teenager, really, I would be cooking, and I think, I need eggs. And I didn't get eggs at the store. And 10 minutes later, Dana comes in the front door, and she's carrying a dozen eggs. And she says, "Mom, I have no idea, but I just stopped at the store and got eggs."
That's intuitive. So
So
action there that's beyond what we understand. We call
Yeah.
it supernatural or just yet to be discovered, because certainly it's available to all of us, isn't it?
Yeah. And the more I am with people in their end days, it's such an opportunity, you that veil opens. It's just like sometimes I would miss being present at a birth, like that feeling of just being so close to the veil. And it's that same privilege that happens when someone passes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so,
Yeah. And then, oh gosh. Yeah.
so now where are you in your traversing of this experience?
Mm.
Another thing that I want to ask you, it's like when you got your first diagnosis,
Mhm.
was I've in having several conversations, it's that whole thing of once you identify yourself as mortal,
Mhm.
what happens in your relationships with others? Like some people don't tell anyone because they don't want their relationship to shift as a result. Or when they do share, then people treat you differently. They don't see you as alive. They already see you as the walking dead. Like, what are some of your experiences around sharing your journey with others?
Mm. Well, I think what I've become acutely aware of is, and I say this from my own experience too, um, to really have true compassion for somebody. Um, doesn't mean we need to fix them or dismiss it, or there's just this freedom that comes when we just allow what is to be, and to hold someone with care despite that. And I've discovered that my circle's very small.
Right.
um, and I also recognize too that I don't have any judgment for people who can't, only protection for myself, because when I need to be held with care, I need to be held with care. It doesn't mean you have to care for me. I think some people, I have no attachment to what people think of me. I think there's been a real freedom. Carrie Groat talks about that too. Like, that codependency edge of caring and people pleasing. In fact, there was a line in the song that was in there early, I want to be remembered unafraid. And I just said, Jenny, I really don't give a shit how I'm remembered. It's just not
Right.
my business. What I care about is how I live while I'm here.
Yeah.
The legacy, is really important to some people, but what's important to me is just to feel the fullness of life while I'm here, and to feel the fullness of what is true. I don't remember who this person was, but one of my teachers said, she lost a son recently, grown son, and unexpectedly in an accident. And in the grief studies, there's an acknowledgement that grief is really the flip side of joy. So when we are feeling deep joy, it's right there. It's right there. When we're feeling deep grief, it's right there. They are one, they are two parts of the same human condition, of the human heart. So I don't know if I'm saying that as eloquently as it was said, but I acknowledge now in my joy that this is just this moment here.
Yeah.
I had a real perception that a year ago, a year and some months ago, just that things were going to be a certain way. And when they changed without any, and I had I was powerless. I can stay in the grief, or I can allow the grief to lead me to the truth. And this is what I think is a real important distinction for me is, we say, oh, feel your feelings, feel your feelings. Yes, your feelings are important, but your feelings are just little compasses to what's actually true and valuable. And there's a gift and an opportunity. Just because I feel hurt that someone did something or whatever, it doesn't mean that that person actually, everything I see is through my own perception.
Yeah.
So I'm learning to offer myself grace and offer other people grace
Yeah.
when they perceive, when I'm not perceived the way I would prefer to be, and just allow it and just to welcome it, because we only have so much capacity to hold ourselves in a world so full of distraction and
Yeah.
meaningless things. So my attention right now is really on creating. My
Yeah.
attention is on creating where it can be of service, to give the gift of whatever wisdom or kindness or compassion I can impart without evaluating others.
Yeah.
That's my.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, sweet, sweet Lisa, you are such a
Mm,
channel of love. And
mm.
but with both you and Jana and so many that have been called to kind of uplift her vision, we of working with these wonderful refugee kids, that it's at the core is that knowing that it's a messy journey sometimes, and it's imperfectly perfect, and that you are a channel of that love. And I witness the courage that both you and Jana have of
Hmm.
living life fully and not avoiding the mistakes as opportunities to live more deeply and more fully. So I'm grateful, so deeply grateful for everything that you've shared today, so vulnerably and honestly. And your music, you certainly are a creator, a channel of love. And
May I close with a little chorus of a song, since you just mentioned grateful?
yeah,
Because the hard thing is being grateful when things aren't going our way.
yeah,
So this is a little song, the chorus of a song I've written, and it just says, grateful, grateful, the gift is always revealed. I am grateful, grateful, in gratitude. I am healed in gratitude. We are healed.
mm, thank you, Lisa Firestone.
Thank you for having me, Rhonda. It's been an honor. Thank you.
And any way that I can uplift the completion of this book, you just let me know. So
Good.
how can all of these wonderful people find you?
Oh gosh, lisafirestone.com is coming. It's coming. It's coming along with the clarity as I move gently with what I want to communicate there. But I am on Facebook, Lisa Firestone, and I am on bestnarrator.com for the time being until it transfers.
Awesome.
So, and on YouTube. So I'm out there.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and one day I'll catch up with to actually record all these songs that are healing. So that is the next 6 months. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Well, love you so much. Thank you again for sharing your time and your heart.
You bet. Thank you,
Right.
Rhonda. Okay.